Hey, Buddy Thomas here. All right, so today I want to go over this Timberking sheet here that I've made up. This is like our first, I would say, decently hot day here in southern Mississippi. It's about 91 degrees. It's awesome. But I'm coming to you from here in the Sawmill shed. This has been asked me before. I'm going to go over a few things on some of these sawmills and everything. And if you're looking at a Timberking sawmill and kind of comparing it to some other type of sawmills out there, some of the key things I look at when looking at a sawmill. So I'm not gonna go into the whole history, but I've used a 1220 for a number of years. I've used a 1400, I've used a 1600 a little bit, and I've used my 2000 now for going on approaching 5-ish months. So I feel pretty confident in each of those. I have not run a 2200 or a 2500. Maybe in the future I will. I've seen them in person, but I actually have not ran one of those mills. They're pretty impressive and very, very large. All right, so essentially I want to break this up into 3 categories on the Timberking sawmills. There's actually a 4th category. They have a new mill out there. I think they're going to call it the 5600. It's a beast. It's a wide cut mill. That's in a class all of its own. I wouldn't say that'd be the beginner sawmill to start off with. That's a sawyer who has been cutting for a while, maybe already has a mill like this and wants to have another option to cut the really, really wide stuff. Or maybe it's just someone who's like, you know, really wanting to just make dining room tables, single slab, beautiful stuff like that, and has, you know, some way to move an 8,000 pound log. Okay, so we'll call, there's like an entry-level mill, there's like your mid-range mills, and then there's your essentially commercial mills. We'll call the 1220s, and those 2 1220s that they have now, if you check out on Timberking's website, new as of a month or so ago, on their website they have the 1220 CRZ, and all it is a 1220 with a trailer package, and there's a few extra options you can get added to that. Then your mid-range mills, so the 1220s, that's what we'll call the entry-level mills. Tractor may not be required on the mill. It would be a definite plus, but not maybe required. Then you start getting to your mid-range mills when you have a 1400 and 1600, and there is some separation between those 2 mills, but I would say that that's kind of like your mid-range options. And a tractor or some way to load the logs is needed-ish. They both can load logs themselves, but really you need a tractor to move logs around your property anyway, so, or a forklift or something to that effect. And then we have our commercial mills, like your production type mills. That'd be the 2000, 2200, 2500. Now, Timberking used to have a 2400, and that was replaced, I don't know, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, when they came out with the 22 and 2500. So each of the mills offers a gas engine as standard, with the exception of the 2200 and the 2500. Those come standard with the diesel engine. So the prices I'm going to kind of tell you here are for the gas engine option only. They also do have electric options for these mills, but I'm going to give you the prices as of April 2020 of these mills. So the 1220 and 1220 CRZ. So you have a 1220 that's stationary. That's about $8,300. Then you have the 1220 that's on the trailer package. That's almost 10,700. It's 10,690. Those both have the same engine options throughout all of them, and there's some slight differences. The 1220 CRZ, of course, has an axle, of course, has jacks on it, and of course, it's going to be a little bit heavier and stuff like that. Then you have your 1400, your 1600. There's a large price difference there. Now, I had a 1400 diesel as well. That's a fantastic mill, and the reason I chose that mill is because I was moving out of at the time I had a LT15 diesel, and I was moving out of that size and wanted to go. My next goal was I got to cut wide, so I wanted to cut wide, and that'll cut a little bit wider. And so that the 1400 has a price starting at about $16,995. The 1600 is $28,995. So that's a pretty large jump there. That's just over 10 grand. And then you start getting into your 2000 and 2200, 2500. Again, those are more your heavy-duty commercial type mills. The 2000 starting off at $41,495 for the gas option. The 2200 is $59,595, and then the 2500 is $71,995. But again, those do come with diesel engines, and that large price jump you see in those diesel engines, a lot of that's that diesel particulate filter. And I'll go into why I chose a diesel engine on this and why it wasn't that big of a price jump. It was a big price jump, but it's not that bad. All right, so let's talk about the 1220s. The 1220 is a great manual mill. It's got a head crank up and down, forward and back. It's a manual mill. Does not have log turners. You are the log turner with a cant hook, but any sawyer that's worth his, worth his weight and everything has a cant hook. You need to use a cant hook. The weights on those mills are 1,400, 2,000 respectively. For 1,400 for the non-transportable stationary one. It is transportable. You can put it on a trailer in sections and move it around, but it's not a trailered one. The 1220 CRZ that does come on a trailer is 2,000 pounds. All right, so the big numbers to take away with. What size log can you cut? What's your max width of cut? And what is your throat cut? So across the board, I'm only going to say this, I'll probably say it some more, but I only need to say it one time. All the cutthroats on Timberkings is 16 inches. That's a huge cutthroat. That's the height of the distance between your blade, where it's cutting, all the way to the obstruction above it, the structure of the sawmill. On all the Timberking sawmills, they're 16 inches. In fact, I think I measured ours and it was like a little bit more, maybe a 16/8 or 16 1/4. But not only with that throat cut, you actually have that box. If you've seen the other Timberking videos, you know what I'm talking about. But there's nothing that obstructs inside that box. There's no belts, there's no pulleys, there's no structure. Whereas on some of the other sawmills, like on my LT15, there was a huge structure there. So I think it said that the throat cut on a LT15, now don't quote me on this, is somewhere around 11 or 12 inches. Yes, except if you're right up against the log stops, then it's only like 8 inches because you've got this diagonal piece of metal going there. The older Timberking sawmills used to have a belt that would run through there, but they added some extra idler gear or pulleys there, and you don't actually have that belt there in a way. So you actually get a true box, 16 inches by whatever your max width of cut is. That's pretty huge. So one of the things that made me move up from my LT15 to a Timberking sawmill was the width of cut. It's really hard to look at some websites of sawmill manufacturers to figure out what is their actual width of cut. They'll say it can handle a 32 or 36 inch diameter log. That doesn't mean it can cut a 32 or 36 diameter log up into a slab that size. What it means is you can take it, you can get between the box, between the structure of the mill, and take cuts off of it until you get to what size it can actually cut. On a Timberking 1220, and this also goes for a trailerable one, that's 29 inches. You can do a max width of cut at 29 inches. That's huge. My LT15, I believe, was 24 inches. Now it can handle a log, I think, up to 29, 27 inches, something like that. But 24 inches. 24 inches is like the absolute minimum you need for a countertop in a kitchen, or if you want to do a table around 40 inches. I mean, you're pretty much maxed out if you book match the piece out like that. But on the Timberking, you're getting 5 more inches, 29 inches. And it's a pretty affordable package and everything. The length of cut, 17.9. That's pretty comparable to what's on the LT15. And then, there's some other great companies out there, like Cooks are great saws too. But you gotta look into the fine print when you actually look at the pricing. And that pricing might only be for one bed section. So to get extra bed sections, you have to pay a little more. The log stops are manual in a manual mill. That makes sense. The log dog is a manual crank, which is a hand crank system. It works great. You can really put a lot of pressure on there. I will say one thing, you don't really get to a log stop that I like until you get to the Timberking 2000. On the entry level, on the entry level mills from Timberking and on the mid-range mills, you have the mechanical swing. On the 1220s, that swing is independent on each arm, meaning each arm you have to go to adjust, and there's a few pins you put in place. Whereas on the 1400 and the 1600, they use the same type of mechanical swing, which you control from your station at the back of the mill. So you pull out a pin, you bring it up, they all move on an arm as one unison body. The no log turner, and again, you are the log turner. And one good thing is they all offer the electric clutch on the engine. That electric clutch is pretty awesome. On the 1220, at least on my wife's grandmother's mill. As you increase the throttle, there's a switch you hit there and it engages that clutch. Very distinctive sound, very much like the electric clutch you find on most lawnmowers. Great proven system, it works great. The blade guide, the little roller wheel that goes in and out, not until you get to a 2000, they're all manual, which is not a bad thing, but you just have to know before you cut into a log, what is my max width of cut going to be, and you got to make sure that manual blade guide is moved out far enough. If you don't do that, then you'll be adjusting it while you're cutting. You'll have to stop and then adjust it out. Having the 2000 here, it's really nice. You can adjust it with a little switch there with the electric motor. It's pretty awesome. And there's no set works that I know of for the 1220s. So the 1220, it would be more for like your entry-level sawyer, a guy who wants to, or a girl who wants to cut for themselves and not really branch out and do stuff for other people. Maybe a few jobs here and there, but really it's for the DIY, the farm owner, the person who wants to build structures on their property, off trees, off their property. Not massive amount of production. It's a great entry-level mill, and you can do a lot with it. If you look on some of the forums and the Facebook groups and then the websites, there are a lot of people who have built many things with the 1220. In fact, up in Tennessee, we rebuilt our old barn on the property. It's a pre-Civil War barn. We had the Amish come out, we dropped some trees, pulled out the logs with the perch-on horses up to the sawmill. I cut poplar and white oak for that barn, and we rebuilt that barn with the Amish's help. It's a fantastic mill for the guy who wants to do it himself. Then you get to your mid-range mills. Again, the 1400 and 1600 I would call the mid-range mill. The nearest competitors would be essentially your LT 28s all the way up to maybe the entry-level LT 40, somewhere around there. I think that's a pretty comparable way to break it down. There are some pros and cons to each and everything. The Timberkings, again, you can't really beat their width of cut. On the 1400 and 1600, again, you're getting a heavier mill. One thing I didn't say, the 1220s, the stationary one, your log deck sections are bolted together. So if you have a foundation, that's great. A nice level working field, you've got some leveling legs there, but they're bolted together. On the 1220 trailer bowl model, they are bolted together, and then they've got some bar that they weld over top of that. But on the 1220 trailer bowl one, you have 8 jacks that go with it, and you have those additional 2 jacks on there because all the rest of the mills that have a trailer run 6 jacks. The reason you have those 8 jacks is because it's a 3-section body. You have to have the extra jack support there to support those connection points. Even though there is some welding going on there, it's not a solid tubular steel frame like you see on the 1400 and up. All right, so back on to our mid-range, the 1400, 1600. Again, that's the 1400. Nearest competitor would be like a 28, LT 28, and your LT 35, like kind of like your basic one. But where it wins out is that max width of cut. Now, the 1400, 1600, and 2000 can handle a max log diameter of 36 inches. That means you can get between the framework of the sawmill a 36 inch diameter log. Now, if you can find a 36-inch diameter log that's 36 inches for the full length of the log, good on you. I don't think they exist. So that's part of the, like on one end you might have that, and then you might have some tight spots. You never really want to try to max out your mill. I mean, yes, you're going to try to max out your mill, but you shouldn't do it all the time. It's hard to do, and when they say your max cut, so the max cut on the 1400 and 1600 is 32 inches. I have cut, I think 30, maybe 30 and a half inches on my 1400 before. To get a 32-inch cut is very difficult. I don't say it's impossible. It's difficult though, but it is possible. And I don't. The wood miser doesn't even come close to that. It's in the 20s still, 26, 28, something like that. You don't really get something that wide or wider until you go to like the LT40 wide cut mill, which you're going to pay extra for. We're in Timberking. These are all standard. They don't make a lot of variations to their mills. They make a couple mills fully decked out and really nice. and heavy. All right, so the log stops, I already went over that. They're mechanical swing, working one unison swing there, pretty nice. The log dogs are different between the two. On the 1400, it's the same as what you have in the 1220. It's a hand crank system. Whereas the log dogs on the 1600, it's a combination mechanical hydraulic, and the combination part would be it's a hydraulic in and out. So pushing the log up against the log stops hydraulic. However, the mechanical aspect of it is the up and down portion. You actually have a little part that you screw on, like a little hand crank thing to set your height. All right, log turner. They both have log turners, but there are vastly different things on those log turners. On the 1400, it's an electric winch that raises and lowers the actual log turner, and it works great. And then you have mechanical turner, which is, it's on the same type of chain, the big heavy duty chain and everything. You have this hand crank system, a large flywheel sprocket and everything, and then to a smaller one to get that mechanical advantage. I have turned some 2,000 plus pound logs in my 1400, but for the most part, the 1400, most of my logs I turn with a cant hook. On the 1600, you do get a hydraulic up and down and hydraulic movable chain, bidirectional. And the 1400 is bidirectional, but against mechanical. But you do get that bidirectional hydraulic chain, which is really nice. And then the 1600 does have hydraulic rams, so you can load logs up to 4,000 pounds with the two rams with the arms. So the 1600, the way I'd separate the two is the 1400 is the guy who wants a little bit larger mill with some basic hydraulics on it, but is not quite there yet to do jobs at other people's houses. He might be the guy that says, bring me your logs and I will cut them for you. That'd be the great opportunity for him. The 1600 is the guy who's, okay, I've moved beyond doing this stuff in my home. I now have the ability to go other places, load the logs onto the mill myself, without having to use a lot of equipment and everything. So the 1600 is actually a mill that you can start doing jobs at other people's places with, because it does give you that ability to load your own logs. It's got the hydraulic up and down. It actually has a command station back here, whereas the 1400 and the 1220s, you're walking with the actual saw head. And I believe you do that on LT 10, 15, 28, and 35. I think you're still walking with those ones. You don't really get a command station until the LT 40. But not all the LT, I don't know, it's confusing. I try to keep up on all sawmills, but I'm falling behind on some of that because I'm in love with this one. The command post on a 1600 is not movable. It's a fixed command post. And on the 1400 and the 1600, you can do simple set works. Key word is simple. They do work very well, but they are a combination of buttons you can press and preset numbers on there to get some cuts. It's nowhere near what the advanced computer set works is like on the 2000 and above. And then, let's see, what else do they have? Again, that's like your mid-range. And then we'll get into the bigger ones. And I'm really going to talk about the 2000, and I'll have to kind of abbreviate some of my talking about the larger mills and that, because I don't have first-hand experience. But this 2000, I offer kind of a weird, it's not weird, it's a different service. I don't go out and cut at other people's places, but I will take it to my other farms and cut. But I don't really take my mill out. My buddy Jack, he takes his mill out and he cuts all over the place, and he does a great job with that. I specialize in a different type of cutting. I bring woods from different areas and I cut them here, and I specialize in unique woods and unique cuts that no one else has. And I also have people bring me stuff. I'll have people bring me logs all the time, and I cut them up for them. So the 2000, this is your entry level. I shouldn't say entry level. This is your first commercial sawmill of the three that they offer there. And with a commercial sawmill, you get a command post here with a ton of options, which is awesome. The 1600, you have like 4 less controls here, but there's a lot of similarities between them. It's a big jump between the two. The biggest, nicest jump that I would say, there's 2 things really, 3. There's 3. The fact that your guide roller on this is electric and you can move it in and out while you're cutting through a log is phenomenal. That means no more getting off to the side of the mill, adjusting a screw-in portion and moving it out, in and out. That's really key. One of my favorite things is the vertical log stops. The vertical log stops on this mill allow you to cut things such as knotty cedar that has like knots and branches all over it. You're not sweeping that log, so you're just going straight up and down, and it's really easy to mess with a log on here, and it's really easy to turn a log. One thing I'll say, if you're using a turner on the 1600 and 1400, you can do it the other ways, but you should have your log stops completely vertical to allow for that log to take that load and transmit it down into the frame and everything. If you have your log stops at an angle, you can actually bind them up and bend them. On these vertical log stops here, again, it's 2 inches wide and 1.5 inches thick bar stock steel. I have seen someone who has actually bent these suckers. I don't know how he managed to do that, but he did. That's pretty impressive, but I think it's very hard to do. So they offer a 37 horsepower Kohler engine on the 2000 as standard, and that's at the $41,495 price. If you want to upgrade to the diesel, it's a different diesel that they offer on the 1400 and 1600, but it's the same horsepower. And what I mean by that is the diesel they offer on the 1400 and 1600, which is the exact same on both of those, is a 3-cylinder Kubota at 24.8 horsepower. And it's a great engine and everything. It runs a pretty high RPM. I want to say it's like 3,200-ish RPM, something like that. And it has essentially 3 settings on the controller here for idle, blade engagement, and then full out cutting. The 2000 offers a 4-cylinder Kubota diesel that is 24.8 horsepower, but considerably more torque. I think it's approaching 90-something foot-pounds of torque, and it is a lot lower running RPM. So it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000, 2,100 RPM when full out. And I think that has to do a lot with the Tier 4 compliance. So what they did is they actually have, this engine can go, if you actually look up the VIN number of this engine, it goes up to like 33, 35 horsepower, so in that range. But what they do is they tune it down and maybe increase the flywheel size on there, but they change some injectors and do some stuff and limit the RPM on it, but you still get a ton of torque, which is awesome. And it really doesn't matter what your engine speed is, as long as you have your wheels set up to the correct size and your pulleys and you're doing the calculations here. It's all about blade speed. You want to keep that blade speed up. Having the extra torque behind there is really nice when you're making those really wide cuts. But the Timberking 2000, again, it can handle 36 diameter log, but what you really start gaining on is you actually gain 3 inches on top of the 1400 and 1600. You get a 35-inch max width of cut, and that is, again, doable. Very difficult, but it is doable. Whenever people start talking about max width of cut, like I said before, it's doable, but in order to get a log perfectly to get that, it's very difficult. And the length on this one, you get it 1 foot longer, and that's, I don't know why, it's a foot longer than what you get in the 1400 and 1600. And you can cut through it, again, across the board all the same. Your log dog is hydraulic up and down as well as hydraulic in and out, which is awesome. You can actually use the hydraulic up and down to move logs in and out as well. I've done that a few times. It's a really cool feature. The log turner, again, this is fully hydraulic, bi-directional log turner, and it's a beast. It'll move whatever. Again, you still have that huge deck section that's all solid steel or solid tubing and everything. There's no piecemealing of the deck. It's all one contiguous piece of box tubing. Your loader capacity does go up between the 1600 to the 2000. You're up to a 5,000 pound log with the twin rams over there, and they do great. They lift up. I don't use them that much, but the other big thing that you take away with is the advanced computer set works. That advanced computer set works literally will make you a better sawyer. it makes it pretty hard to screw up. When you're doing dimensional cuts for people and you're doing a large order and you need everything to be the exact same, this thing is like spot on. It's 1/16 of an inch or better consecutively across the board. And I didn't think I would use it as much as I do. I use this thing all the time. The only time I really don't use it is whenever I'm cutting cants, like an 8x8 or a 6x6 or 12x12. I'll just do that with the magnetic ruler. But this computer set works is awesome. If you check out my latest video, you'll see some stuff on that as well. So again, this is more for the guy who he's got his tractor set up. He's got a good system set up where he likes to go out and cut other people's places, or if he just wants to cut a whole lot of his place and cut really wide, really big. This is like the Cadillac of sawmills. Again, you don't get really close to this on any other saw manufacturer about this price range until you start getting really big and really way up there. The LT40, I guess, would be this main competitor, as well as the the Cooks, one of the Cooks one as well. The Cooks sawmills are great too. It's very hard on their websites to actually figure out what the max width of cut is on some of them, but for me, max width of cut is key, and that cut through there. So you've seen my videos. This is literally the best mill I've ever had, and I don't see the point. I don't see myself upgrading anytime soon. I may upgrade for other reasons, which is going to be kind of goofy. Contemplating right now selling the Diesel 1400 that my dad has, and there's part of the reason behind that is because he's going to have double knee surgery here soon, and he really doesn't need to be turning logs with a cant hook or anything like that. So I might give him this mill, and if I give him this mill, why would I have two 2000s? I might as well go big or go home. So maybe bump up to a 2200. But then you start looking at the 2200 and like, why not go to a 2500? I don't know. So I'm just dreaming. I'm always dreaming about bigger and better. But really, once you start getting beyond the 2000, you get into, okay, you get an extra axle. So you have a tandem axle, which is really nice if you're going to go out there and really tow the sucker around and go cut other people's places. That's why I'm kind of in a dilemma. I don't really do that. It'd be nice to have, but I don't really tow it around. One other thing I really like though is it comes standard with those diesel engines. So you've got the Kubota 49 horsepower on the 2200 and 65 horsepower on the 2500. One of the big issues with the price jump on these mills over the rest of them is you're paying a lot for that Tier 4 compliance on these diesel engines. So you're adding that diesel particulate filter on there. They're not exactly cheap, and that may actually tack on an additional $1,200, $1,500 because they're pretty expensive to do that. But you are getting a 49 horsepower Kubota Diesel and a 65 horsepower Kubota Diesel, which allows you, if you wanted to jump up to a little bit thicker blade width and blade thickness and everything, you can do that, which means you can cut faster, harder. You know, if you're cutting pallet wood, you can get a 2000, but if you really want to push that mill hard, you want to cut fast, you go ahead and get that 2200, 2500, load a thick blade, wide blade on there, and you plow down, you know, hammer down the sucker. What the 2200 and the 2500 give you is they give you about a 3-inch wider max log diameter, and your max width of cut is 2 inches wider at 37 inches. So 37 inches is only 2 inches more than 35 inches on this. Again, I don't really have any equipment that can handle a log that starts getting over 35 inches, because then you're talking about logs that are in the 3, 4, 5,000 pound range. Then it just gets hard to operate your equipment around something like that without breaking it. You get an additional log dog on the 2500. You get some more diesel controllers on the 2200 and 2500. Shows you a tachometer, which is really nice and everything. Whereas on a 2000, I actually don't have a tachometer. It has a little control panel here, but it's simple stuff. It tells you if you're overspeeding, tells you if your temperature's up, battery, oil. Then you have like your glow plugs and your start stuff and your hours. The other models, they actually do have tachometer there, which is pretty cool, I guess. But to tell you the truth, I'm not really too worried about that. And you have a little bit loader. Your loader is a 7,000 pound load capacity vice 5,000 pound on the 2,000. But again, I don't really have anything that can move a 7,000 pound log around effectively without having to roll it, push it around, and then you get a whole lot of stuff on there. The cool thing is the 2,000 and above all run the same computer system. So if you are familiar with the 2,000, it's a quick and easy jump up to 2,200, 2,500. There's no learning curve whatsoever. In fact, on the 2,500, you get two extra log stops, and you get an extra log dog, and I think a log turner, which is pretty nice. But in a nutshell, that's kind of like the rundown of these mills. Again, the 1220s I would say would be for your entry-level person who likes to stay at home, cut wood for themselves, maybe do the occasional cutting for someone else, but nothing major. Your mid-range, your 1400, your 1600s. The 1400 is a guy who likes to stay at his house, maybe has people drop off stuff for him to cut, some simple hydraulics and everything, want to stay below that $20,000 price range. The 1600 would be the guy who's wanting to go out there and maybe make some money out traveling, cutting on people's properties, and then cutting a little bit faster for himself. The 2000 and above, literally you can do anything you want. It's a mill that will do it all. It cuts wide, it cuts fast, it's got plenty of power, it can load logs itself. It's got a computer system so you can make the same cut every single time. It really goes into what do you want to do and how much do you want to spend. And you know, for a lot of people, for me, I went through 3 sawmills in 3 years, and the only reason I did that is because my need changed, and the sawmill was making enough money to kind of pay for itself and the tractor and stuff like that. So I ran the numbers and said, you know what, I can do this. So again, I started off on my father-in-law's 1220, and whenever I moved here in Mississippi, I bought an LT15 wood miser with a diesel on it. I ran that for nearly a year. Then I got a 1400, ran that for nearly a year. So every time I outgrew the mill, I gave it to my dad. And then around Christmas time, I actually owned 3 sawmills, and I sold one to one of my buddies. But now, essentially, I've got the 2000. I don't need to go any bigger. But if my dad, which he's going to have surgery, whenever he has his surgery and everything, will probably do some kind of wheeling and dealing. I don't want to get rid of this mill, so I'm just going to give it to him. I'll give it to him. And then I don't know, maybe I'll buy another 2000, or maybe I'll just upgrade from there. But I hope this has been informational. I will see if I can get a copy of this put on to something, and so people can look at it and everything. But this is kind of like the breakdown. There's really no comparison on Timberking website between all their mills. Nor is there a breakdown between this Timberking or Timberking sawmills and other manufacturers out there. I've kind of run through some of them in my head and everything, but there are a lot of great sawmill companies out there. They all have their pros and cons. It's just really, it comes down to budget, and then another big thing comes down to is customer service. They're all great, but I will say this: if you've talked to folks at Timberking, if you've been to Timberking, and if you've actually had a Timberking, it's hard to beat the service you get. I mean, we've had little issues here and there, and it's nothing to, you know, randomly get a new piece or part in the mail and everything, and then you're like, sweet. Or, you know, if you have any questions, you can call them up. They're a small little crew up there, but they will tell you how to run something, how to fix something, ways to upgrade stuff. So they're always open for, you know, to talk with them, and just great people up there. I hope that's been beneficial to y'all. Just kind of like my breakdown and why I have what I have, and kind of like who these mills will be for. But I literally am in my happy place with this mill. This is my baby. I've got 4 other babies, but this is my mechanical baby. This thing's awesome. I could not be happier, and I am so fortunate and blessed to be able to afford a mill like this. And really, the mill affords itself. It actually pays for itself and for the tractor, and I could not be happier for what this mill has done for myself and the family. And it's just a great tool to use, and also it's a great tool that I can discuss with other people. We have a great group on Facebook. We have a great group on the YouTube channel, and just the people at Timberking. So you kind of join that Timberking family. I mean, I think I'm preaching here, but literally it becomes like a little family, and you can, I call up some people. I got Mike up in Michigan up there. You've got Floyd over in Florida. Like, there's some cool people out there who have sawmills, and you can literally talk to them for an hour on the phone, because I do like to talk, and I have talked to them for an hour on the phone here and there. But great community. Just the Sawyers in general. Most Sawyers are awesome people. That's what I'll say. And hopefully you too can join the Sawyer community at some point. They are, it's a fun hobby, profession, and just passion. For me, it's a passion. So enjoy, safe cutting, and we will see you all around. Thanks.